I think that eventually zero point 0.1 Bitcoin is going to buy 50 years of your salary. And in this video, I want to explain to you what exactly I mean by this. Let's get started. I'm going to go right into the median income chart for the US. You can see here that over time, this is the salary that you would earn if you earned the median income in the US. The number is just going straight up, and we know exactly why this is. It's because the US dollar is constantly losing value. The amount of things that you can buy with the US dollar is decreasing. So, as the purchasing power of the money that you're receiving for the job that you're doing is decreasing, you need to earn more money to buy the same things that you would have been able to buy for a lot less before. So, for example, you go to the grocery store and it's going to cost you 20% more than it did last year. If you go look for a used car, it's going to cost you something like 50% more than it did in 2020. If you add healthcare, if you add the price of housing, if you combine all of those things, all you'll see is that you're able to buy fewer and fewer things with the same number of dollars over time. So your employer has to pay you more. They have to. If they don't, then you lose money. This chart here shows you just how much more money is being added to the system every single year. Over time, it's accelerating. We can see here that in 2020, the amount of US dollars that were in the system increased significantly. And now it seems like we're back to the same path that we were on back here. It increased, then it temporarily decreased, but it never will come back to this level here from February 2020. One of the problems here is that this number is rising much, much faster than this number here. The amount of US dollars in the system is going to increase at 7 to 10% per year, while most people's salaries are probably only going to increase by 2 to 3% per year. So if the number of dollars in the system increases by 7 to 10% per year, and your income only rises by 2 to 3% per year, you've lost between 5 and 8% of your purchasing power each year. So you're working harder, but at the same time, your lifestyle is suffering because you have to work harder to buy the exact same things. I think this is a paradigm shift that's very difficult for people to wrap their heads around because they've spent their entire lives thinking that everything gets more expensive over time. But it's not the things that are getting more expensive, it's the value of your savings that's decreasing over time. So the point of this video here was that you'll be able to buy 50 years of your salary with zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. And how exactly will that happen? If we go back to this chart here, we can see that the median US income is going straight up. This number will continue to rise forever. But the important thing here is, does it rise fast enough? If it doesn't rise fast enough, then it's not useful to you. If your income is rising slower than your expenses, then you're losing money. You won't be able to retire if you just earn an income and you try to save the income in your bank account because, like I said before, the savings that you have are going to keep decreasing in value. What you can do, though, is you can buy assets that will preserve the value of your savings. So over time, the value of those assets will increase faster than your savings will be eroded. One of the assets that you can buy to protect your savings, the time that you've already put into your job, is Bitcoin. So we can see here, Bitcoin is massively outperforming the increase in the median income in the US. One of the reasons for this is that the people who can provide labor to earn the median income in the US can keep increasing. So what we're seeing here is that Bitcoin has a limited supply, but the number of people who can offer their labor to earn the median income in the US has no limits. So it can increase forever. It's possible that the birth rate could increase, people could start having more kids. It's possible that immigrants come in from other countries. It's possible that we find technologies that provide us with the labor that makes it so that we no longer need to pay people to do that labor. For example, McDonald's replaced their cashiers with robots, with essentially computers. Now, how many of their employees are being cut out of a job because they're no longer needed and the job can be outsourced to a computer for a much lower price? Today, we use the US dollar to measure the value of everything. So, US dollars are the world reserve currency. They're the base layer form of money that everybody uses, everybody transacts in. I think at some point, instead of measuring things in US dollars, we're going to see those things measured in Bitcoin. Now, if we go back to that question, how is it possible for zero point 0.1 Bitcoin to buy 50 years of your salary? Well, if you measure your income in terms of Bitcoin, you're going to see that your income is decreasing significantly. At one point, you could buy 407,000 Bitcoin with 1 year's worth of labor. This is in 2010. At this time, the median income in the US was $40,000. But like I said, the supply of labor can increase, but the supply of Bitcoin can't increase. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. And as more people figure this out, they start buying what's available to be bought. So we can see here in June of 2011, the median US income was up. It went from 40.7K to 42.5K. But in terms of Bitcoin, the median income in the US dropped to 2,600 Bitcoin. So it fell from 407.5K Bitcoin all the way to 2,600 Bitcoin. Then we can see here the median income in the US in terms of US dollars is up to $44,700 per year. But in terms of Bitcoin, it's down to 37 Bitcoin per year. So just in 3 years, because Bitcoin has a limited supply and the amount of labor that's possible has an unlimited supply, we can see here that the price of labor in terms of Bitcoin is down massively, 99.9%. This number is going to fall forever. It's going to trend to zero forever because Bitcoin is limited while labor is unlimited. Today, the value of the median income in the US is 0.68 Bitcoin or about $73,000. So we went from 1 year's income being worth 407,000 Bitcoin all the way down to 0.68 Bitcoin. I made this quick spreadsheet just to give you some more numbers. We can see here the income, the price of Bitcoin and the year, and then some income growth numbers and the Bitcoin's percentage growth numbers. In 2010, you could buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin for 0.00002457% of your salary, 10 cents out of a $40,700 salary. In 2013, you could buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin with 0.26% of your salary. At that time, Bitcoin cost $1,200. In 2017, you could buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin with 1.96% of your salary. Your salary was 52,000, Bitcoin cost about 10,000. Then in 2021, it cost you 8.89% of your salary to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. And today, it costs you 14.6% of your salary to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. So maybe by the end of 2025, if Bitcoin hits 150,000, I think it could go higher, but if it hits 150,000, 0.1 Bitcoin will cost you 20% of your annual income. Let's say this actually goes to 75,000 just to keep up with the change that we made with Bitcoin. So 0 0.1 Bitcoin will cost you 20% of your salary. What's going to happen by 2029? Do you think that your salary will maybe go to 85,000, I'm assuming? Maybe 90,000 for the median income. I don't know how much higher it can go, but let's say 90,000. Keep in mind that we could also see a lot of people losing their jobs if we do actually have a recession over the next few months. So this could decrease, but I'm going to give the US employers the benefit of the doubt. Let's go with 90,000 here. The problem with estimating how much of your salary it'll require to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, so this number here, is that we don't know what Bitcoin will be at that time. For all we know, Bitcoin could reach 500,000 and come back down. Even this number may be too conservative. Maybe at this point, Bitcoin's $1 million. But let's be a little bit more conservative. So we'll say that in 4 years from today, so the next bull market, Bitcoin's price may be at $350,000. If Bitcoin's price goes up about 3.2, 3.3 times from here at 107K, you're going to see that zero point 0.1 Bitcoin costs you 38.8% of your salary. But I think that this number is going to be much higher than this. So let's say even 500K. If Bitcoin's at $500,000, it'll cost you 55.5% of your annual income, the median annual income, to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. And just to continue the spreadsheet, I made some more estimates of where things will be. So the income in 2053 will be $159,000. So you'll see that people are making way more money, but the price of Bitcoin will be much, much higher. So my guess here was that if Bitcoin rises 50% per each 4-year period, then Bitcoin's price will be at $5.7 million. At this point, it'll cost you 357% of your annual income if you're earning the median annual income in the US. It'll cost you 357% of it to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. And again, this is with a conservative 50% for every 4-year period. So that's about 12% per year. If we say that Bitcoin is going to double after each of these 4-year periods, then you'd be able to buy 20 years of your salary with zero point 0.1 Bitcoin in 2053. Now, I know that 2053 is really far out. You could buy more Bitcoin if you want to, but 20 years of your salary by 2053, that means that you could retire your kids. You could give them a massive savings account by the time they turn 20, 25. And keep in mind that we're being really conservative here with $150,000 by the end of 2025. I think it could go higher just based on the demand with all the companies that are buying Bitcoin, with all the individuals that haven't started buying Bitcoin. I think this number could go a lot higher. So let's say by the end of this year, it goes to $300,000. And then by the end of 2029, it's at $1 million. We can see here that by 2053, zero point 0.1 Bitcoin will buy you 40 years of salary. If we extend this out for another 4 years, we can see here that zero point 0.1 Bitcoin will buy you 73 years of your salary. I think if this happens, we're not going to be using dollars anymore because the US dollar is going to be nearly worthless. Maybe in the US, people will be using US dollars, but I don't know if the rest of the world will want to hold US dollars if the value keeps decreasing like this compared to Bitcoin. Anyone in the world can access Bitcoin. Most of the people in the world have no idea this thing even exists. And the people who do, some of the smartest people in the world, are still rejecting it. This is a long term game. I'm not saying that if you buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, you're going to be able to retire with 50 years of your salary tomorrow. If you want to retire with zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, I think you're going to have at least 30 to 40 years to retirement. By then, you may be able to have a lot more Bitcoin. So maybe you'll have more money than you need to retire and you'll be able to retire sooner. But the point here is that labor and the services that you offer can be multiplied. Anyone can learn the same skills that you have. Anyone can offer the same products and services that you have. If you can build something, somebody else can build it better. If you can do something, there's a robot out there that's ready to be made and ready to be deployed, and it'll do your job at a much cheaper rate than whatever you want to be paid. Regardless of where you think the world is going, whether you think AI is going to take over the world, whether you think that robots are going to take every single job, I personally think that you're going to be able to trade your Bitcoin for value at some point in the future. There are still going to be certain things that only humans can do. For example, if you want to go on vacations, there are going to still have to be people who are working. There are going to be robots that have to be maintained, people who maintain those robots. You're still going to have to pay for certain things. And I think that Bitcoin can make your life much, much easier. You have to also keep in mind that on this spreadsheet, I did assume that your income is going to rise forever. It's going to rise by 2 to 3% every single year. What if that isn't the case over the next 10 to 15 years? What if your income actually starts decreasing because AI replaces so many jobs, because robots replace so many jobs? What if instead of increasing by 10% every one of these 4-year periods, what if it decreases by 10%? I think that's possible because there will be an abundance of labor. All of this comes back to one core principle. The supply of everything else can be increased, but the supply of Bitcoin can't be increased. The number of people who can hold one Bitcoin simultaneously will continue to decrease as more and more people figure out what Bitcoin is and they start accumulating smaller and smaller amounts. Eventually, it's going to get so expensive to buy one whole Bitcoin that people aren't going to be thinking in terms of Bitcoin. They're going to be thinking in terms of Satoshis. Zero point 0.1 Bitcoin is equivalent to 10 million Satoshis. So, in a world denominated in Satoshis, where let's say a Satoshi is almost the equivalent of a dollar, 10 million Satoshis are going to get you pretty far, especially if the cost of living continues to decrease forever. On a Bitcoin standard, people won't buy real estate to save, they'll just buy Bitcoin. So, what we're going to see is that the price of housing is going to decrease. We're going to see more technology that makes it easier to build houses. We're going to see 3D printing, we're going to see prefabricated houses, and just those two technologies alone are going to decrease our cost of living significantly. As houses become more abundant, people will be able to buy them for cheaper. And at some point, nobody will want to sell their houses for dollars. They'll only want to sell their houses for Bitcoin. So, just to summarize there, I highlighted 2 reasons why I think that zero point 0.1 Bitcoin could eventually buy 50 years of your salary. The first one is that the price of Bitcoin keeps rising and the price eventually runs away from us. We keep using dollars until all of the value is accumulated by people who own Bitcoin. The second way that this could happen is that labor could become abundant. We could have robots, we could have more technology, we could have people coming from other countries to take over jobs. When labor becomes abundant, the price of labor decreases, and the employers who are willing to buy that labor are able to pay less for employees. Keep in mind that Bitcoiners are still going to eat, they're still going to need a place to live, they're still going to buy cars, they're still going to go on vacations. So the only way for you to get paid will be to offer services to Bitcoiners in exchange for Bitcoin. This is going to work really well for you because over time, your savings will increase in value compared to the current system where it's designed to decrease. So, as usual, the best thing that you can do here is save in Bitcoin. If you save in Bitcoin, your purchasing power is going to increase over time and you're going to be in a much better spot than the average person. If you have any questions for me, you can book a one on one meeting with me. I also have a private community where we do live sessions every single week. Both of the links are in the description below. I hope the content in this video was valuable. If it was, please leave a thumbs up because it really helps with my channel.